Hello and welcome if you're new, welcome back if you're not. My name is Cindy and this is the Growing Wild Studios YouTube channel. Here we focus a lot on crochet projects, but we get creative and make projects from across the fiber arts community. Today though, we are doing none of those very creative things. We are actually getting into a lot of numbers and stats behind the set of markets I just did over the summer. I wanted to bring you along with me just to kind of round out the series a little bit. I expect this to be the last market-related vlog for a while. And kind of in the same vein of transparency I tried to have throughout the series, I wanted to, give you some real numbers so you have an idea of what it's really like to go out and do this for the first time. I want to take a look at these numbers and, these other stats because I want to learn from them and I plan to do markets going forward in next year. And really, if you don't look at what you've done, you can't change for the future, which is what I tried to do throughout the 3 markets anyway. So I figured it would be a good time to look at the physical stats, figure out a little bit more about my business, my audience, what sells, and bring that information into the future. So without further ado, let's get into the numbers. Before we dive in, I do want to provide a little caveat because I can already hear some people, especially Mike and Aubrey of Maintenance Phase fame, whispering in my ear and telling me this. So I understand that I don't have a large pool of, people to pull from. As we'll talk about, I didn't have a lot of customers, so I'm working with a very limited sample size. But for right now, I'm working with what I've got. So I have reservations about these numbers. I have questions about these numbers, but I wanted to take and use the information I was able to get and see, what I could do in the future. So as, more things sell and I have more customer data to pull from, I absolutely will, but this is what I've got to work with right now. So let's start with what actually sold. At the first market in July, I sold a total of 6 items. I sold 2 coasters, 2 keychains, a plant hanger, and a tote bag. This was the best-selling day. I had a couple of family and friends come who wanted to come and support me, and they helped with those sales. Outside of that, I had 1 customer who did not know me who purchased 2 items. In August, I had 2 sales. I had 2 plant hangers sell to 2 different people. And these were both to people who did not know me before, which was very exciting. And then in September at the last market, I had 1 sale of a bandana, which was also to someone who didn't know me before. Overall, I sold 12 items total, which, overall, I think the theme of this is that a lot of these numbers are lower than I wanted and or expected them to be. So I think after July, I'm, happier with these numbers because I think the July market definitely, the reality came crashing down on me and adjusted my expectations a little bit. But I definitely, am mediocrely happy after, being a little bit more humble, basically. Of course, I don't want this to be the case going forward all the time, especially if I'm, taking the time and doing so much effort to only have 1 sale is not fun, basically. But knowing that, as we'll talk about a little bit later, that this area, where this market was, is not really where I think my market is. I think having 12 total sales across the 3 months is a decent showing. In July, I focused more on making items that were on the small or middle scale of the, the pricing spectrum. The area I was selling in isn't, it's not in Philadelphia. It's more rural/suburban. I didn't know what people were going to be willing to spend on handmade items. So I focused on those things thinking that's what people would be willing to purchase. And the person who didn't know me and purchased something, they purchased a coaster and a keychain. So maybe I was on the right track, but the friends and family that came, they get some of the bigger items. They got a tote bag and a plant hanger, which were both on the higher end of the pricing spectrum. The plant hanger was 25 and the tote bag was 45. So definitely that skews the data a little bit just because those people are my friends. They might be more willing to spend some more money. But again, it's the first month. Can't extrapolate all the data just from 1 month. The next month I sold 2 plant hangers. So again, telling me that things on the maybe middle to high range or getting into the higher range is maybe what people are pulling towards. This was also the market that I brought the yellow cardigan to for the first time, and the partway finished 6-day star blanket. I've talked about it in that video. Those items are not meant to be big sellers. They're meant to really pull people in, get people interested in the booth, and, showcase the artistry that I have. So was not upset that those didn't sell in the slightest, but I was glad that they did do their job and they did get more people into the booth. The last day, September, I didn't have a ton of big changes. I, again, had the cardigan. I finished the star blanket, and I did add beanies into the mix just because it was starting to get into the fall. Still very warm weather, but I think in September people are willing to overheat for the aesthetic a little bit. So I did bring some beanies to that market. However, again, none of those sold. The only thing I sold was the bandana, which is fine. And I think, again, that's on like the middle low end of the spectrum. So I think overall I was on the right track in thinking this was an area that was going to spend a small to medium amount, especially because this event feels much less like a vendor market and more like a community event, which is totally fine. It's just a different vibe of people. The people who are going to a community event are not necessarily wanting to spend more money on handmade items. So I think that's why I sold what I did. And I think there were a handful of people who were interested in the medium items because of what they were, or they were a little bit older and had maybe some additional cash to spend. It was also interesting to see that the plant hangers did so well. I sold 3 out of the 7, and it was the best-selling item I had across the 3 days. And honestly, I'm happy about that because I did a little bit of a reconnaissance mission the month before my first market, and noting that there were a lot of flower vendors, a lot of, planty type of vendors, I decided this was something I wanted to add. So knowing that I was paying attention and I'm kind of on the right track and maybe seeing what might do better at different markets instead of bringing everything to all the markets. Let's talk a little bit about who the customers were. I'm going to start off by saying we are mostly talking about the age range of the customers. And that is because everyone who purchased from me was feminine presenting and white. There's not a lot of variety in the data. And I just wanted to note that that is why we are not looking at that. This chart is broken down into 3 different age demographics for kids who were under 18, adults who are of the parental age. So we're talking 20-ish to 40, 50-ish parent age. And then we're talking about older adults who might be more grandparent age. This is a very loosey-goosey system. I did not ask people their ages. I'm making very much a judgment call on my part, but really this was kind of the best categories I had. And again, this is something I would like to expand on as I have more data. Getting into it, in July, I had 1 customer from each of these categories. I had 1 kid who I mentioned in the video. And then we had 1 person who was around my age and 1 person who was a little bit older. So one from each category, a nice sweep across the board. In August, I had 1 adult person and 1 older adult person. And then rounding it out in September, I had 1 kid-aged person purchase from me. So in total, I had 2 customers from each age range category, which I'm not sure how to interpret something that I have been trying to figure out, is where my customer base is. I'm trying to figure out if they are more like me, if they are young adults. Can I call myself a young adult at 30? I don't know. Young, mid-adult range that maybe are a little bit more whimsical than you might imagine. They like to have things from their childhood. They love the girly things, and they're just, bringing that vibe into their life and radiating that. And slash or is my market more on the younger side of things, because even though it was only 2 across the board, there were lots of kids that came into my booth who were interested in the rainbow beanies, who did like the scrunchies, but their parents said, you don't need another scrunchie, which I understand. Unfortunately, I don't know if this data is super helpful, and is why I am excited to get to more markets and figure out who is really purchasing from me, so I can focus on where I'm going to sell and who I'm marketing towards. Last but certainly not least are the cold hard numbers of what I made and what it cost me to put on the market. So I am going to talk about what I made across each of the markets. But because this was, my first set, I didn't want to heavily weight my startup costs against the July one. So we're going to take the total profit against the total costs. These costs include things for, the yarn to make the items that I sold, for tablecloths and other display items, for the booth fee that I was charged to, have a booth at this market. So those are all the things that are going into this cost. Getting into it, in July, I made a total of 110, August 50, and September 16, with a grand total of $176 across the 3 markets. Getting into the number, the big, cold, hard, did you make money, did you lose money of it all? I made a total, again, of $176, and my total costs for these markets was $814.18. So I did lose $638.18. So the answer is no, I did not make money at this market. And that's it. I did not make money at these markets. However, this experience was much more of a learning experience. What I got was not money, obviously. What I got was the experience of doing this for the first time, learning what to have in stock, learning to look out for what the customers are interested in, learning to have, things that draw people in, to show off your creative artistry rather than just being like, what's the cheapest thing that people are going to buy? I have a new wealth of knowledge, and I will continue to learn as I do more markets. I certainly don't think my learning is done. But for me, the knowledge is what I gained from these markets, not the money. I want to acknowledge that that is an extremely privileged stance. I know that there are people out here doing their best, and if they're not making a profit, they don't continue. And I completely understand where those people are coming from. And if that's you, I know that that is hard, and I wish the best for you, honestly. I am lucky that I will be able to go into markets in the future, and this net loss is going to become less of a loss as the more markets I do. I hope, obviously. But I just wanted to be transparent about what my number was and what I got from these markets. So where am I going from here now that we've talked about the big, scary reality number of it all? I've been kind of talking about it throughout the series and in this video. I do not 99% sure think that I am going to be doing a market in 2025 again. Part of that is just as a wedding photographer, this is the busiest time of year for me, and I don't know if I am mentally and physically able to do so. I am on the wait list for the same market I was just at. And if something happens to open up there, I think I would take the opportunity because people are looking to purchase more in, the month of December. I might do better, even though it's a market I don't plan on returning to in 2026. But aside from that, I have reached out to some other markets and applied, but most of them are full, as to be expected. I'm late to the game. I'm not super worried about it. If I get into this market, great. And if not, it's not the end of the world to me. I also had a lot of high hopes of being an online shop this year. However, again, just as I get busier into wedding season, I don't know how feasible that is for me. I'm getting a lot of creative energy and energy put back into me by doing YouTube videos. And I would rather put some more energy into that than try and hobble along and put together a store that I'm not maybe super happy with before the holidays just to get sales. I'd rather take the time, through the end of the year and into January to know I'm making a website I'm really proud to have people look at. For right now, selling is a little bit on a hiatus. I might be putting certain things up on, Instagram, maybe a story sale, something with honestly a lot less effort than putting up a website. So if you see me there, please feel free to reach out and TM me or send me an email being like, I'd love to purchase this. That'd be totally fine. But for right now, I am stepping back from selling and markets so I can regroup in the new year. That is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much. I know that the Market Vlog series has had some highs and some lows. And there's a lot of emotions going on in this series. So I thank you for really coming on the journey for me, for being invested in what's going on in my life. I wanted to document it because you see a lot of people online who, do go to markets and are very successful. And, it's their income or at least a decent second income for them. But I just wanted to be honest about what my experience was. I didn't obviously expect to not do so well when I went into it, but wanted to have it be the real honest emotions and experience of what I went through. So again, thank you guys for coming along on this journey with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.